for a lot of people who don't really know much about open source, maybe an easier way to digest what Minds is trying to do is, think about the top 10 websites in the world. So you have Google and Facebook as the top two. You've got YouTube in there, you got Twitter in there. The only open source website in the top 10 is Wikipedia. So in Wikipedia, we obviously all know and love, and they share all the software, the blueprints of the software of their site, along with all of the information that's actually on the site. So what Minds is trying to do is to become, so Wikipedia disrupted all the proprietary social networks, all the proprietary encyclopedias. So you had, remember, Encarta, Encyclopedia Britannica, all those stupid CDs that you put in your computer 20 years ago. Those are pretty much gone now. Like, they exist, but nobody really uses them. Wikipedia, the open alternative, successfully disrupted the proprietary encyclopedias. So what Minds wants to do is essentially the same thing in the social networking realm. So that we can, and most likely in collaboration with other decentralized open source and encrypted networks, we can make the top site in the world free and open source. Because if we can collectively achieve that as a network of networks, that the impact that is going to have on the planet is just massive. Because when proprietary networks dominate the planet, it's essentially limiting innovation, because they have all of this fancy software that we're using right now. We're on Google right now, and it's very nice software, but they don't share how it's built. So they're essentially forcing the market to reinvent the wheel in order to compete with them. But if they would share this Google Hangout software or Gmail or the countless other proprietary apps that Google has, if they would share it, then we wouldn't waste our time rebuilding what they already built. We would have spent the last few years building on top of what they built and making it even better. So, proprietary software really stifles innovation. And yes, Google participates in open source, and so does Facebook on like a few, back-end sort of frameworks. But I think maybe that makes it a little bit easier for people to understand why open source matters.
Yeah, why is it important? And I like that one phrase you said. Part of it was to the liberation of information, and this is kind of like we're in this information age, this digital age, and this has been always the knowledge is power, information is power, and it doesn't necessarily belong to them, it belongs to everybody. And the more people have information, the more they have access to certain stuff and are aware, the better it is for everybody. It's not just a few people. I mean, I think it even helps the companies as well, as if we get empowered. And I think Douglas Rushkoff kind of made this point about how the old model of economics, like where you just extracting value out of a system, and instead of reinvesting it, that once you reinvest it, then you have your customers are more wealthy to spend more money and are able to buy your products and are able to add to your company as well.
Yeah, there's always two sides to the story, and I think that, I completely agree with what Rushkoff is talking about. But then, you hear about all this stuff with Prince recently, and he actually took all his music off the big streaming services because he didn't agree with how they were treating the artists. Now, there's definitely merit in that, and one of the big tools that we're working on right now in terms of monetization is really figuring out how to financially reward the top creators on Minds for the traffic that they generate, etc. And so I think that that's a lot of what Prince was talking about. But there is also a degree where you sort of have to let go of this idea of, you know, the only benefit of sharing is, well, Prince was thinking that if he keeps it close to, he's going to make more money essentially if he keeps his music close to his chest. But then you have tons of evidence that putting a certain amount of music into the commons does financially circle back to help you. So it goes both ways. I mean, it is true. You can't just give everything away completely 100% for free. You can, but you know, there is a balance. But I think that there's a way to have the best of both worlds, and I think that someone like Prince would be more open to streaming services if there was a more serious incentive and reward structure for the artists.
Yeah, and we've recently been kind of like, we haven't totally tackled this topic, but it always kind of comes up, and especially too early on in the Minds panel development of the Minds panel show. We talk about how the kind of like the give and take of remixing of you know, everything's a remix, that documentary, and
Right,
even
right, great.
how we've been kind of like feeding off each other with Minds montage, and then at the same time that Anonymity and Corey were working on that, I was just playing around with remixing videos myself, and I was getting kind of bored, or I was getting static with just ripping videos off of YouTube and doing my kind of thing with that. And I was like, I want to do this with Minds Media, and kind of like the thought behind that is that instead of promoting the YouTube kind of artists, I want to kind of promote what I feel more comfortable with the Minds. And so when I started doing that, I kind of just took my initiative and I kind of remixed their montage. And later on, we had this discussion that we had that kind of like, the first feeling is like, oh, he's stealing my idea, or that was my idea, or whatever. But then later, you find that we are strengthening each other by having like a feedback, having like this kind of give and take back and forth, like, oh shoot, Satori D is doing this stuff and we're doing this stuff. And then we started kind of like posting back and forth of like having this collaboration without even being in the same room or even directly talking to each other. It was a really neat experience. So that kind of like, go on.
Yeah, no, I just like how you say that. There's that knee-jerk reaction when you see your stuff being remixed without being told. You have that reaction to say, no, wait, that's mine. I own it. And you know, but once you learn to let go of that, yeah, it sort of forces you to ask yourself, what am I really trying to accomplish by creating this media? Am I trying to enrich the commons with ideas to help evolve humanity, or am I just, is it an ego thing? Am I just trying to is this all about me? And then, you know, ultimately, I think most people probably learn to humble themselves and say, yeah, actually, I'm trying to get this idea out there. I'm trying to influence people. And so that sort of helps you let go. And it totally, I mean, people do give credit too, like most of the time. I mean, with all the articles that we write on Minds that, you know, get spread all over the internet, like people steal tons of them, but they almost always link back to us. And, you know, there's like that classic music album called Steal This Album. Yeah. That, you know, it just proves the point. I mean, if you either want to get it out there or you want to struggle to get it out there, and unless you're some huge celebrity, you know, your chances of getting it out there without giving it away are pretty small.
Yeah. Corey, you want to touch on that idea a little bit?
Yeah, I would totally agree with what's being said right now. Like, I think as far as attribution goes and stuff like that, I feel like the relationship and the ethics of it and stuff like that, it's kind of like, you know, hold on, sorry, I'm losing my train of thought. Okay, Actually, come back to me in a second.
Real quick, what was your first reaction when you saw me kind of like remixing some of your stuff?
Oh no, I thought it was awesome.
Okay. Because like
Yeah.
me and Gov Spiders actually were talking about it, and I talked about it with Aminity on a couple occasions, and it was kind of like, oh, what's Satori D doing as far as like, you know, because you guys haven't even released your montage, and I kind of was doing like, because actually what I was doing is I was playing with that idea, and I was kind of playing with the idea out in public, and I didn't care about it being too polished. And me and Gov Spiders were having this conversation about like sometimes you need to, it is like this like Taoist thing of doing, of not doing, and kind of like having that ability to have some kind of like play, and not, you know what I mean, not, and then like you develop it and have this process, and I wanted to kind of have that like out in the open, and it kind of pushed me to move to having the Minds panel, having some kind of loose structure where we could kind of have this more direct feedback and develop something together.
Yeah, you really get the feeling that the media and the art is more alive when you're sharing it in a commons type environment as opposed to a much more locked down environment. Because I mean, when you see your stuff getting remixed, I mean, that's like the ultimate compliment.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just proving that people are interested in what you're doing, and you know, even if they're criticized what you're doing, they're still showing interest.
Yeah.